A classic WoW's true potential is yet to be realized. Now we know classic hardcore is coming. We know that. We're excited for it. We're going to do it. But is that truly the future of classic? Well, Mr. Willie here, he doesn't think so. Let's see what Classic Plus is all about.
I want to start this video with a point that I was going to make right at the end because it's something that I want to get across. If you went back many years, you would have been told
Starting with the end, and you're that's an attorney thing. You always got to start with your conclusion.
classic servers were never gonna happen, but people asked for them on forums, on social media, and even at BlizzCon for a very long time, and eventually we got them. If you went back a bit less time, you never would have thought Blizzard would put time into creating seasonal servers for WoW Classic, and now not only have we had one seasonal server, but a second one is on the way. And if you went back a couple of months, no one believed that hardcore would go from a niche thing on Era Realms to something that Blizzard will look to make official by releasing their own realms. 3 instances of it'll never happen, happening. Sometimes enough people wanting something is enough for it to really happen, and it should happen again. For the topic of today's video, Classic Plus. Classic Plus has been an idea that's been talked about for as long as Blizzard has confirmed that Classic Realms will be existing. What if instead of going down the line of expansions once again, Blizzard instead committing to finishing storylines that began in vanilla, adding new content in line with the spirit of the game, and growing vanilla world.
In essence, Classic Plus is just adding more content to the Classic world, but never going on to the next expansion, just like adding another boss or zone and not changing the fundamentals of Classic, right? Maybe you're adding a little bit of a stronger gear or something, but again, not going back and changing any, not adding things like LFR or stuff like that, just continuing on with the Classic skeleton and just making it a bit beefier. And whether or not Blizzard would ever do this, I mean, this would take dev time. The thing about Classic as is or Classic hardcore is, yes, there's dev time involved, but they're not necessarily creating new content. They're just working with the content that's already there and either rehashing it or creating some new rules for it, for like hardcore, for instance. This would take much more work. So there would need to be a bigger return on investment for stuff like this.
Warcraft into something relatable, but ultimately a little bit different too. So today I'm going to go into why Classic Plus is ultimately the true end game of Classic servers.
They could probably have
something that should
AI
be
come up with the Classic Plus
considered
ending
by Blizzard. I want to start off by saying that Classic WoW for an MMORPG is a very popular game. Little has changed development-wise, and what Blizzard did well over a decade ago now is pulling in hundreds of thousands, maybe even at points millions of players. Now we don't have exact...
I will say, watch and see, when Classic Hardcore hits, the Twitch channel for World of Warcraft is going to be #1. I guarantee it. That day it's going to be #1. It is going to be pure insanity, and the popularity of Hardcore WoW, at least in that first week or so, is going to be sky high.
It's going to be like an expansion release in the game, but we do have some information on this matter. Activision Blizzard's quarterly reports are published publicly, and one of the bits of information you can find there is the monthly amount of active users across the different development studios. Here's the most recent one for the quarter between April 1st ending June 30th. Across Blizzard, the most notable performers were Diablo, with Diablo 4 coming out in June, and Diablo Immortal saw an increase of players because of this. They also mentioned that Dragonflight is outperforming more recent expansions for the same point in time. Importantly for Blizzard...
was it outperforming? Yeah, in the same point in time, meaning it has a higher retention level, right? It's not necessarily that it's outperforming previous expansions as a whole, but in that same point in time, it's retained more players, which makes sense. But, Dragonflight's had a good supply of content to keep people playing.
Also says that an individual who accesses the same game on 2 platforms or devices in the relevant period would generally be counted as a single user, and in June they saw 26 million monthly active users.
Damn.
Let's say an estimate of 12 million of those were on Diablo as the bulk of players, 4 million on Overwatch. Is that too few perhaps? I know the game's taken a hit since the PvE cancellation, but I reckon it's more popular than you'd expect. 6 million perhaps on retail WoW. We know that it's exceeding previous expansions, it has frequent content releases, and a roadmap for the future too, which leaves about 4 million users left between the remaining games. Say Classic, on average, had 1/3 of the players that retail does, we're still looking at about 2 million monthly active users. Again, this seems a little bit high, and it may peak at that amount with patch releases. Even if it was literally half of that and Classic saw 1 million monthly active users, that would work out to a bare minimum of just over 33,000 unique players every single day for 30 days in a row. So in reality, it's going to be a six-digit figure quite easily, I reckon. Let's bring up some other MMOs that are in active development to see what kind of daily, non-unique player counts there are. New World just got a major update not long ago, under 25,000 players peak for the past month. Lost Ark peaked over 40,000 in the last month, average about 25,000 or so. Black Desert Online, daily average of about 25,000. This does have another launcher though, so this doesn't show the full
Black Desert
picture.
Online
There is a site that checks
playing.
RuneScape's player count every 5 minutes, which is publicly displayed information on either game's homepages. At the far right of this graph, you can see the most recent player counts, with old school RuneScape being somewhere around 92,000 players as a monthly average, and RuneScape 3 around 25,000. We can look at Classic in a different way too through ironforge.pro. This counts the number of characters logged in raids or arenas each week. However, this will count alts as separate characters. Even still, the most recent reset showed just under 430,000 characters. In fact, the two biggest Classic realms, Gehennas in Europe and Benediction in North America, have more non-unique players raiding and PvPing alone than most other MMOs have total players.
Classic WoW ain't no slouch, that's for sure. Yeah, like he's saying, Classic WoW, just that version of World of Warcraft has more players than most other entire MMOs.
Here is that Classic World of Warcraft, in the grand scheme of things, is a very big MMO with a huge number of players daily. Many other MMOs will be celebrating record players with what Classic sees regularly. Clearly there is a demand for a slower paced, simpler, and straight up mechanically easier MMO. Classic is currently meeting that demand, but as we progress on through expansions, things do start to noticeably change. Endgame content starts to seriously ramp up in difficulty, class design begins to move away from the familiarity of vanilla, and more systems are added into the game. Wrath, even more so than Kata, feels like a turning point here. Ulduar was a difficult raid for Classic. Now, don't get me...
I think Wrath is the turning point into, you know, what is today seen as retail WoW. With the addition of LFR, you guys remember item level was becoming a big thing back then? You had to have an add-on for it. But that started to become a big thing. Like I said, LFR started to become a big thing. We started to see basically class bloating in terms of like ability bloating and all that was going on in Classic in Wrath. Now, Wrath all in all was a great expansion, but I definitely think it can be marked as a turning point of the end of like the Classic era of WoW and the beginning of the modern era.
Wrong, every raid ever will see a drop off in players the longer it goes on, but have you seen the week by week drop in raiders during this phase of Wrath of the Lich King Classic on ironforge.pro? I can't help but see this and think harder raid does not necessarily equal better raid for the majority of players.
What is this, like the opening of Ice Crown or something? Why does shit just go up all of a sudden again?
Cataclysm is going to be more challenging than Wrath by a long shot. Also, Classic era getting more popular right now might just not be the biggest of coincidences. And it's not the hardcore scene that has grown on it either. Just your regular vanilla WoW enjoyers are populating the era realms once again. And Classic era should continue to exist regardless of what happens, of course. But I can guarantee that nearly every single player there at the moment would at least try Classic Plus. Classic is still, to this day, a very popular MMO. The player base is there for Classic Plus to happen, and I'm sure of it. But what about Blizzard actually committing to it and making Classic Plus,
it would take far more dev time than anything they currently have done with Classic WoW. That's for sure. You're creating new content.
Things tend to get a bit more complicated. This is where time, innovation, and ultimately, money come in. Back in the day, of course, games had far shorter development cycles. It's amazing to see what studios could get done in a couple of years. EverQuest began development in '96 and released in '99. Vanilla itself took an estimated 4 to 5 years of development. And rather famously, the interior for Molten Core for Classic was designed in a few days as a proof of concept to work on a bigger raid than what Onyxia's Alert offered at the time. These days, it's not just re-releasing Classic though.
Yeah, you want to get shit done quicker? You think AI is going to do it? No, fuck that. Create a time machine. Go back in time and pull these devs back into the future. These guys used to crank content out.
It's rebuilding it to work with Blizzard's modern infrastructure. This has been something we've been made aware of at many different points throughout the game's history so far. This is why you've started to see modern features on the Classic client, such as the reconnect button if you DC or AFK for too long, and more recently the updated Dragonflight options menu. So Blizzard are probably working with a whole lot of random code and scripts and figuring out how to make them work again without totally breaking them when they turn them back on. Meaning for newer assets, encounters and so on, it's still going to be a fair amount of work, right from design, art, sound, all the way to the end product. Also at Blizzard, I get the impression they move existing staff around to suit the needs of different teams, rather than hiring someone new to fill gaps which are presented. It does make more sense after all from a financial and company point of view.
3 years for vanilla development, but they were creating the game from scratch. That's pretty fast. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about they made a raid in fucking 2 weeks. He's talking about Molten Core. That shit was put together in 2 weeks. That's crazy. There was far less balancing and shit going on back then too. And like we said, ability bloat, everything. There was less to consider back then. But still crazy.
But recently, Diablo 4 has been a huge focus for Blizzard, and it seems they've really cleared space to put a lot of effort into that. Dragonflight has been getting content at a pace we have not seen for many years in retail World of Warcraft.
Best pace since Legion.
And Classic has had a smaller team so far, but there is plenty going on. Wrath of the Lich King is progressing, we've just had updates to Era, we have hardcore servers and a new seasonal at some point. All this is good and everything, but outside of the main Classic game, of course talking about Wrath here, there has been so much time between releases. And during this downtime, the rate at which we're progressing through the current Classic expansion is not getting any slower either. When Season of Mastery was announced as a yearly thing, I thought there would be 2, maybe 3 months of downtime between each season. Well, here's some fun stats for you. Season of Mastery Naxxramas came out over a year ago now, on July 28th, 2022. In fact, Season of Mastery itself released 16th of November 2021 and closed February 14th, 2023. That's 456 days or just under 1 year and 3 months. The Burning Crusade Classic launched 1st June 2021, and Wrath Classic came out on the 26th of September 2022. Between those dates is 483 days or just under 1 year and 4 months. In total, the Burning Crusade Classic was out for just about 1 more month than Season of Mastery was, which is kind of crazy to think about. Which of course at this point in the video we get onto something we were going to talk about eventually, the money. Blizzard won't do Classic Plus because
this is what matters. This is the reason they'll do or not do Classic Plus. It's a company at the end of the day. They got to make money.
Cost them money. You've probably heard it, and there is definitely something in that statement, but I don't believe it's the cost of developing it that's the problem so much as the opportunity cost of not developing something else. The Classic is really successful as an MMORPG, but not as successful across Blizzard's range of games. And I bet you are waiting for me.
And another thing, do you charge like an expansion fee for a Classic Plus? That's another thing, because creating an expansion, obviously you're going to charge for it. You're going to get, the price of the box, and people are going to buy it and continue on with that shit. But Classic Plus, would you be able to justify charging for it? Would people pay for it? I don't know. Pro bono, wow. Yeah, not likely.
To bring it up, but over at Jagex, allegedly RuneScape 3 generates higher overall revenue due to their microtransactions, despite old school RuneScape nearing 4 times the amount of monthly players. On World of Warcraft, I think retail has more players for sure, and you know what else it also has more of? Microtransactions. So I would be very confident that it's going to be getting a lot more work put into it, because what Blizzard can earn back from it is going to be much higher than what they can with Classic.
Yeah, population numbers aside, whether retail has more players or not, that probably depends on what time you look at the charts. But retail is clearly more profitable. They get more money out of each person because of shit like the WoW shop and purchasing expansions and everything else.
We did just have the WoW token
WoW
put into
token.
Classic though. This will have added some extra value to this version of the game from a financial point of view. And if you take a look at the historic price of the Classic tokens so far, it's been consistently dropping in all regions. To me, this suggests there are more people paying for tokens and posting it on the auction house relative to those purchasing it with in-game gold. The token, however, is just for Wrath. In vanilla, there is no microtransactions, no token, and only a subscription fee. And for games these days, that's, well, it's not really how it works anymore, is it? Is there another online subscription-based game that's this popular with no token and no microtransaction? These days you've got to min-max that revenue via several different sources, and that is problematic for vanilla.
Maybe old school RuneScape? It doesn't have a sub, but I don't know like how transactions work in old school RuneScape, but I would guess it's somewhat the same.
Vanilla is also far more economy driven than later versions of the game. Gold retains value throughout the entire duration of the game, and the ability to trade it for real life money would very much harm the integrity of the game to an enormous degree, more so than it already does through people buying gold from bots, that is. Vanilla almost feels as though it is unmonetizable beyond the subscription fee. So for new content to really have a chance to be added, there would have to
It's not unmonetizable, but if you added monetization into it, the Classic community would be up in arms. It would completely ruin what they love about Classic. Old school does, it's just called bonds.
Clearly be an extremely large demand for it to happen from the player base. And I think this is one of the big factors holding the potential of the game mode back. 100 people can say they hate microtransactions, but it takes one person to engage with it enough for it to be worth it.
That's right.
How is Classic Plus going to see dev time when currently it's hard capped at $15 a month per person, when Dragonflight or indeed other Blizzard games have a whole range of different ways for money to be spent on them? This is why if you really want to see it, it's worth asking loud and clear for Classic Plus. If enough people get behind it, I think it will give it the greatest chance of existing. And it doesn't have to be perfect, and believe me, for many people it will not be. And between the choice of it's not perfect for everyone and it doesn't exist is kind of a no-brainer.
Freaking shaker is like leaking everywhere today.
To me. Classic Plus would offer huge opportunities for the long term of this game though. It would be a chance to take the story of vanilla in a different direction. I've done near enough an hour's worth of content just on the loose ends of vanilla or ideas that were scrapped, and they are both some of my most popular videos recently. As Classic naturally progresses into expansions with harder content, more class changes and more additional systems, Classic Plus would offer fresh experiences for people who do want the slower paced, simpler, and straight up easier game. Classic's popularity proves that there is a niche in the MMO market for the type of game that it is offering. If this whole thing was just nostalgia, it would be long gone by now.
It would have been over by now
if that was the
case.
We got classic servers, we got seasonal servers, we got hardcore servers. And one day I would very much like to see Classic Plus servers. And that is about all I have for you today. Probably a bit of a different take on Classic Plus. I didn't want to go into the gameplay systems too much, as just getting Classic Plus to be committed to in the first place is kind of the bigger deal at the moment. There are certainly issues with it, which I have highlighted in this video, but at the end of the day, a for-profit company is going to do for-profit things, so I hope enough people make it apparent.
It's a legal obligation to their investors to do so. That's coming from a lawyer.
Classic Plus is something worth investing into. And I don't usually ask, but do share the message if you do want to see
link this
Classic
video in the
Plus
chat.
one day.
It
doesn't have to be on this video either, but posting on forums, social media, even on the comments here, wherever really, let Blizzard know that you're interested in Classic Plus. A lot of things have happened in Classic because the community has asked for it and kept asking for it. Maybe one day Classic Plus can too. But as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you all in the next one very soon.
Yeah, like, you know, with hardcore WoW coming and everything, look, there's certainly a community out there that loves Classic, but like he said, and it really comes down to one thing and one thing only. Would they get a good return on investment if they put the time in to a Classic Plus? I don't know. They're going to have their CFO or somebody come up with that shit, because I don't deal with financials, and I really don't care to deal with financials. But we'll see. Time will tell. Who knows? Maybe with the purchase of, maybe Microsoft purchasing them will give them more resources to be able to do something like this.